Hello everyone.
Hello, sir.
Any doubt from last class? No, right? Okay, then today we'll start with constructors. Constructors are the next member of the class. And how you define a constructor is like a class students. And in that SID, string type name, email, all right. And I'll take a function also show info to show the details. And in that SID right. So this is the class, and if we create object, how it works, that we have already seen in the memory structure also. And so constructor define is optionally you can have some modifiers. It is optional currently, okay, we will not see now, later we will see. Then constructor name is same as class name, and a block in that you can have optionally params, some parameter you can define, and after that a block notation, and in this some statements. Okay, this is a constructor syntax. Okay, modifiers optionally you can use, and then a space, class name same as class name, this is constructor name. Okay, constructor name same as class name, then a parenthesis bracket, in that parameter optional, then a block notation, inside block some statements. Okay, so take the same example. Take a test. Test 74. Test 75.java. Test 75. This is the student class, right, which you have created. So now I'll put this syntax in comment. This is commented, this will not execute. Now following this syntax, modifiers will use optionally. Constructor name is same as class name, so class name is student, same name, a parenthesis, parameters are optional, I'm not using currently, one block. Okay, and in that statements I'll just write print line students constructor, right? This is the output, that's it. This is the member, student class, constructor is the member, and this is the constructor. Now when constructor will execute, let us create an object. The student S1 is new student, right? New student. Now, if you compile this, I'm just creating an object of a student. And if I want to print the information, you already know when I'm creating the object, for these variables, memory will be allocated, all will get the default value. And this I am printing the information. So s1 dot show info, right? Now see the output, how it works. Test .75 dot java println compile again and execute test 75. Okay. It should not be this one. Okay, maybe test 75 already available, but we are recompiling, right? Test 75. Okay, this is students. Okay, so there should be students. Okay, now compile again. So this is the output. It is saying in student constructor and then default value of the object, right? Now from where this student constructor, this output is coming, this is this one. Means when you are saying new student, you are calling this one. Okay, so far whatever object we have created, for each object we are actually using this one. But from where we are using, when you are not using any constructor in your class, then by default automatically at the time of compilation, compiler creates a constructor for you like this. This is automatically there. If you are not writing, it is there. If you are writing, then you can give your implementation. Okay, so the default one which is already available in this, nothing is there, empty like this it is. Okay, empty constructor. But when I am rewriting it, I am giving a statement in it. So that statement is printing. When you are calling this one to create the object, actually you are calling this constructor. Okay, when you are not defining this one, by default at the time of compilation, for each class, whatever class we define, for each class, compiler creates a constructor like this by default. And actually so far whatever object we have created like this, for each, that default constructor was there and that was used to create the object. So now you understood that constructor are used to create the object like this. And you need to call the constructor with the new operator. New is a keyword. It is an operator. The use of new keyword is to call a constructor from the class to create the object. Okay, remember this point. New is an operator and it is a keyword in Java, will be used to call a constructor. And what is the task of constructor? Constructor task is to create the object. Now, when you are not defining any constructor, by default one constructor will be there, will be inserted in your .class file. At the time of compilation, compiler will add that. But if you define a constructor, then this one will not be there. Okay, So if we create another object again constructor will be called student2 and show info. But assume show info I'm not printing, just creating object, and this I'm commenting currently. So 2 times constructor is called, 2 object is created. So this statement has to execute 2 times, right? Compile again, test 75 and execute. Test 75, right? Java. Test 75, constructor called 2 times. Okay, 2 object is created. Instance variable memory got allocated 2 times. No instance block, so that is not executed. Okay. Okay. If you print this also is okay. First student information, second student information. Compile again. Test 75 and execute. Right. Constructor called, object is created already. In the object, these are the default values. Again, another object is created, again constructor called, and these are the default values for that object properties, right? Next, when you define this constructor, then this will not be there by default. Okay, how we will prove it? Let us give 2 constructors. Both, this one is there, I'm giving this one again 2 times. Compilation failed. Okay, you cannot do a constructor like this. Constructor is already defined in the class. It is saying constructor, this one is already defined in the class student. So 2 times you cannot give. Means when you are defining a constructor, this constructor will not be there in your .class file. If you are not defining, then this will be there, and that is called a default constructor. Default constructor. Okay, we are implementing default constructor only, but I need this information also, so I am rewriting it. Okay, I'm rewriting the default constructor. So now you can say here student default constructor called. Student default constructor called. Now compile again, test 75 and execute. Student default constructor called 2 times and with the default values, right? Now 100 student object you create 100 times, constructor will be called. Very simple thing, right? Next is take another test. Test 76. Test 76. And now this syntax I'm not using. Okay. So one constructor is there, and inside the constructor, I am saying SID is equal to 99. Name is Kofel. Email is kofel786@gmail.com. Phone number is some phone number. Right. And this, okay, you can put this statement above. Yes. Right. Now what will happen? Student 1 creating, student 2 object creating, and it will print default constructor, but on this student object, these are the properties assigned. Again, for this one also, these are the properties assigned. So now both the student should have, when we'll say show info, both the student will have these values. Compile it. Test 76. Test 76. Okay, this should be, what is the error message? Integer number. Okay, I should say it is a long. It is long. Compile again and execute. Test 76. Right now, two constructor called two times, two object created, but the values are same. This is exactly similar as, instead of putting this statement here, what we can do is we can take an instance block, right? What we have discussed yesterday, put this statement here. Now this is also same output. This also same output. Compile, test 76 and execute. Test 76, right? It is same output. Then what is the use of constructor? Just to create the object? Not this. Constructor is two tasks, okay? Default constructor is to create the object, Initialization is in the initialization block. But what I want is, I'm creating one student. I need to assign some value for first student. I'm creating another student. I need to assign some value, different values to second student, third student, fourth student, like this. So what I want at the time of creating the object, but that information I can set here only, right? S1 dot SID is equal to 88, like this you can do. And for this also, S2 dot SID is 101, like this also you can do. But what I want is not, this is after creating the object. This is at the time of creating the object, but the value remains same for all object. This statement you can put inside the constructor also, that also results the same. What I want is, at the time of creating the object, I want different sets of values for this, for different object, not the same. Then in that case, what you can do, take another example. Test 77.java. And this is test 77. I'll not assign this here, not here. In the constructor, even this statement also not I'm using now. In the constructor only, I'll assign some variable, okay? You can define some parameters. Int I means I for ID, and string type N for name, string type E for email, and long type P for phone. Like these parameters I'm defining. Now the constructor is not default. It is having some parameters in it, multiple parameters, not one, multiple. Okay. For each of these properties, I'm having the values here. Now what I'll do is, like how we initialized before, now I'm saying here SID is the I value. The I value which I'll pass here. This is the constructor with parameter. Now when I call this constructor to create the object, these values also I need to pass. Okay, I need to provide. And in the implementation, I'm saying the SID is I. Similarly, name is N. N I am assigning to name. Email is E. Phone is P. P I am assigning to phone. Now, I'll say this is not the default constructor. Student with parameter. And what are the parameter? Int parameter, string parameter, again string parameter, and long parameter you have to pass. I'm saying this is the constructor now. Okay. And I have show info. But normally these properties should not be here. These you have to define actually before this. Normally it happens like this, but accessible throughout, so you can do anything fine. Okay. But normally structure should be like this. So now when I'll say new student, it is not okay. New student with empty argument is not there. It has some argument. These 4 arguments you have to pass. You cannot pass one argument, okay? 4. So here you have to say int parameter first. 101, one value, name, this, email, this, phone number, long time. So I'm saying L. This. At the time of creating the object, I am providing the values for those properties. First student. Okay, it is second student. Okay, student 2. and student to show info. Similarly, for first student also, you need to give the values 99 Manoj at gmail.com and some phone number, right? So now how the constructor calls? Okay, first compile and execute this test 77 and execute. Int, this should be int. Again, Java C test77.java and Java test77. Now see, constructor is called parameterized constructor. For the first student, these are the information. For the second student, these are the information. Now how this works actually, when you say like this is like the memory is. So you have the memory and object has to create, right? Assume this is the JVM memory and it will divide into multiple parts. Method area, stack and heap memory, right? So this is method area, stack, heap. So first test will be loaded anyway. This is test 77 loaded. Main method started execution. This is main. Inside the main you have S1. This is S1. Then when you are saying new student, okay, this is the constructor called. From here, the call is at this point. Constructor called. And constructor will be called on top of the main, because from main you are calling. From here you are calling new student with the arguments, right? So from here on top of these, on top of the main, because it is stack memory, on top of main, the constructor, student constructor will be loaded. Student constructor. And what are the parameters you're passing? 99. Okay, the constructor has to load. Inside that I, N, E, and P are the local variables. So here you are telling I memory and the value is 99. Similarly, N, the name is Manoj. Similarly, email, Manoj or something. Phone, this value 2222. Constructor is loaded. After loading the constructor, okay, after loading the constructor, you get the object. This is just constructor load, okay, it is just for execution flow, constructor load, execution flow. After loading the constructor, we'll come back how exactly it creates the object. Now object is creating, and at the time of creating the object, checks for the variables, local variables. You have SID, name, and email. So SID memory allocated, that got default value. Name memory allocated, name got null, default value. Email memory allocated, got null, default value. Phone memory allocated, got 0, default value. Object is created, okay. This object constructor, you remember, okay, when you called a new student constructor, this constructor is loaded. At the time of loading, the value which you are providing from here, 99, Manoj, email, and these comes into these parameters, I, N, E, and phone. and constructor loaded from the main method. Execution is control is in the constructor now. Constructor is loaded here. And these values are the local variable for the constructor. Okay. After that, it creates the object. Object creation task is same. Goes throughout the class and checks for the instance variables. Initialize memory for those inside the object with initialize those with the default values. Then instance block will be executed, but currently no block, no instance block. Okay. So after that, constructor start execution. So first statement of the constructor, this SOP statement, this statement has to print. This will print. Student constructor called. This is printed. Now it is in the next statement. Constructor call is in the next statement of the constructor. What is the next statement? Next statement is I should assign to SID. Where is I? This I, local I, should assign to SID here. This value gets 99. Similarly, N should assign to name. N is this, assigned to name. This value becomes Manoj. Email, E assigned to email. So E, this is assigned to email here. P assigned to phone. This is phone. Phone value 222 assign this. Object constructor execution done. No other statement in the constructor. Now the address of the constructor will assign to. Now it actually goes to the constructor execution is over, right? Constructor execution is over. See here. From the new, when you say new student, this call was there. Now this complete execution, this statement executed, like this P is also executed. Now control from here comes back to this, comes back. Now here you have what you have, S1 is equal to. So this value assigned to S1 means what is the value? 2040. It is pointing here. So now S1 is ready. This is statement execution in the main done. Okay. So this is the flow. Constructor loads. This statement is done. Now come into this. S1 dot show info. Here S1 dot show info. Means from here control comes into this show info. At that time, this constructor execution is over. So this is deleted. Finish immediately. Immediately there is done. When control comes back, there is done. Now on top of this, show info function is loaded. This is show info function loaded. Show info. Now inside show info, what you have? In show info, it is printing SID, name, email, and phone. So it will just print SID 99 Manoj and 222. Done. This statement execution is over. Now from there control goes back. Okay, from main control went to show info. Show info execution is over. This is deleted. Control again comes back to this. Now here nothing is there, so control goes to the next statement. This again S2, same flow. S2 memory allocated. New student with different value. Again constructor will be loaded here with different sets of values. Object will be created. Memory for SID, name, email will be allocated and will be initialized with default values. Then those local values from the constructor will be assigned to these values and control will return back to S2 with the address. Then show info. This is how it executes. Okay. This is the execution flow when you create the constructor, when you call the constructor with parameter. So constructor is used to create the object. That is default constructor. Default constructor is used to create the object, but you can have parameterized constructor also. Parameterized constructor, what advantage it is giving? It is creating the object, but initializing the properties of the object with different sets of values at the time of creation itself. You no need to initialize that separately. At the time of creating the object itself, you give different sets of values and that will be initialized to the object. That is the use of parameterized constructor. Now, come to next example, test 78.java. This is test 78. Now what I will do is I am creating another, this two is already there. I am creating another student S3 with the default constructors. S3 default constructor. Okay. Now if you compile test 78, compile test 78, Java C test 78.java. Okay, it is termination. I missed. Compile again. Constructor, this one cannot be applied through given types because this one you are saying default, and in the class it is saying it is having a constructor with these arguments int, string, string, and long. It is saying that you are calling this constructor which is not having any argument, no parameter, but actually in class you have a constructor which is having this parameter. This is because when you are defining any constructor, you will not have the default constructor in the class. Okay, so default constructor will be in the class only when you are not defining any constructor. If you define any constructor, either default or parameterized, default constructor will not be there in your class. In that case, you cannot use it. But if you want to use default, then you can use another constructor. You can say here that I need default constructor also. Define yourself. In that case, you have to do it explicitly. And I'll say here, students default constructor called. Right now I have two constructors, students default constructor and parameterized constructor. So if I use default constructor, then this remains with the default value 0, null, null, and 0. If I use this constructor to create the object, at the time of creation only, object states get initialized. Okay, properties. States means properties. So those also gets initialized. So in case of student 3, if I say s3 dot show info and compile again and run test 78 and execute. Now see, for this one parameterized constructor called and it got the state initialized. For the second one also parameterized called, but the third one was default called, student default constructor called, and the value remains default. Okay, it is not initialized. And after that, if you want to initialize this, then you have to initialize here s3 dot sid 103, something like this. Then this will work fine, right? So now two constructor with parameter different. Here no parameter default constructor. This is having a parameter with constructor. Now another constructor I'll use. Say I'm not using phone in this. Only ID, name, and email. Phone is not there. So this parameter is without phone. 3 argument is int, string, and string called, and phone will not be initialized. So now if I use this constructor to create the object, for SID, name, and email will be initialized, but phone remains default value. Now do that. Student 4 and 104 saying say it is hussein@gmail.com phone number. Yes. And student 4.show info. So to create this object, 3 argumented constructor is called. Okay, 4 is not required then. Phone not required. 3 argumented. How many argument I am passing? 3. So 3 argumented constructor will be called. For this, no argument. Default will be called. For these four argumented constructor will be called. This is also four argument constructor will be called. Okay. So now compile test 78, save it and compile. Test 78, okay, execute. Okay. For the first one, four argumented constructor called. Second one also four argumented. Third one default. And fourth one, three argumented. So phone remains 0. Phone is not initialized. Okay. Now, this is how many constructor? Now 3 constructor. Even you can have another constructor which is not having these two. Only SID will be initialized. Remaining remains default. So these 3 constructors with different sets of arguments is called constructor overloading. Okay, constructor overloading. Multiple constructors you are defining in your class with different parameters and different parameters to initialize the state with the separate values. Then this is called constructor overloading. Okay, constructor overloading is possible in Java. Okay, you can overload constructor like this. And why you will overload constructor? In some cases you may not have the value for all the fields at the time of creating the object. In that case, which field you have the values, those with these initialization you can create a constructor. You don't have anything, use default constructor. Okay, remember, if you are not writing any constructor, then only default constructor will be there. If you write any constructor, even default, then default constructor will not be provided by the compiler. Okay. Next is test 79. Test 79.java. So when you are overloading constructor test 79, these are not required. I'll take 2 properties and show info, only SID and name. Okay, SID and name. Default constructor is there and show info. Okay, default constructor I am specifying. If you are not specifying, fine, it will have a default, but currently assume I have one. And I want to overload. I want to overload constructor. Okay. So overloading constructor in the sense constructor name should be same, only parameter should be different. So I'm writing one constructor here. I'm just initializing with ID int I. Okay. And I'm saying only int argumented constructor called. This is one. Another constructor I'm overloading, which is having int and string name. Okay. So I'm saying here string. And this you have to initialize. SID is I. And this you have to initialize SID I and name is N. Okay. 2. Another one you can take. Just name, not ID even. Just name. I'm saying it is just a string type. And here you have to initialize only the name. So 4 constructor we have written. One is default, one is only with ID, one is ID and name, another is just name. And in the show info method, I'm printing ID and name. So one student I'm creating with assume default argument. So nothing is there. We are not providing anything means a constructor has to call which is not having any argument. So this is default. It will call this one. And then show info. SID and name should have default value. Another one I'm calling assume. For the second one, int, just ID I'm initializing. S2. S2. S2 is just ID I'm initializing. So this is S2, just ID and show info. S3 ID and name 88 and name. Okay, S3 show info, and S4 is ID and sorry, not ID, only just name, and S4 info. So depending on the argument, corresponding constructor. Now this is having one argument, this is also having one argument. Which one has to call? Depending on the data type. This is type int and this is type string. So constructor which is having one argument which is of type integer, that will be called in this case. In this case, constructor is having one argument, the word that is of type string, that will be called. Okay. So in the second last case, it should be this one, and only argument int, it should be this one, right? Now compile and execute depending on the argument. Okay, constructor you are overloading, depending on the argument it will be called. 4 student object we have created. Test 79. Test 79 and test 79. Okay, so first one default, nothing is initialized. Second one only int ID is initialized. Third one int and string, both is initialized. This one only string, name is initialized, ID is not initialized. So constructor you are overloading like this. But assume I have another constructor with two argument, this same, okay, same and same, exactly same. You cannot write constructor like this. Overloading, this is not a correct overloading. Compilation fail. It will say it is already defined. It is saying this is already defined. Okay. So when you are overloading the constructor, argument must be different. It cannot be same. Argument must be different. It cannot be same. But see, this is having one argument. This is also having one argument, but type is different. Data type is different. So that is valid. So in this one, what I'll do, I'll take the name first and then int. Now this is having two argument, this is also having two argument, but the order is different. Argument order is different. Now when I'll call for this one, I need to give integer value first, then a string value, then this is constructor will be called. But for this one, first I have to give a string and then int, then this constructor will be called. And here also I'll do a modification. I'll say it is int. Okay. Call that one. To call that one, I'll take here one student 5 or okay, student 5. But order should be different. Order is Kishore and 7. Right? Now you see. Compile test 79. Compile execute 79. Okay. First one default constructor, nothing is there. Second one argument, int and string, ID is initialized. Int and string, ID and this initialized, string and int. Okay. And this is just a string. So when you are overloading the constructor name must be same, but parameter should be different. Otherwise it is not okay. Parameter should be different. But when the parameter is different, it can be number of the parameter can be different or order of the parameter can be different. Order or number. Okay. This number and this number is different. Order of the parameter can be different. So this order and this order is different, or type of the parameter. This is one argument. This is one argument, but both type is different. Okay. When you are overloading the constructor parameter must be different in terms of type, order, or number. Any one. It should be different. Otherwise, it will not work. So this is constructor, use of constructor, overloading of constructor, rules to follow when you will overload, and why we need constructor. Okay, and how it will call. This is constructor and constructor overloading. Any question? Remember, class operate constructor name must be same as class name. You can write a method also, like you can say a method here with the name same as class name. same as class name, students, and you just say here, this is students method. Okay, this. Now, what is the difference between this and this? Different is it has void here, but that is not having void. This only this is the different. Okay, so constructor must have same as class name, but it cannot. This is a return type. Okay, return type value. So constructor is not having any return type. If you specify a return type for a constructor, this will become a method. It will not be a constructor. So method name can be same as class name also, but method should have a return type. Constructor must be same as class name, but it cannot have a return type. If you specify a return type for a constructor, that will be treated as a method. It will not be considered as a constructor. Okay, and that you cannot use to create the object. So that is constructor. Any question in this? No question, right? If no question, then we have another important concept in this, that is this word. This is a keyword in Java, okay? And it is very, very important. Why it is important? Take a test. I'll take a simple one. Test 80.java. And one student class. In that show info, this is also not there. Just one parameter aside, okay? Okay, take another one also. 2. And now show info is printing SID and name. I'll take a constructor, student constructor, and int I and string type name. To initialize these two, I'm just taking here n. Now SID is I and name is n. That's it. One constructor and this. Now create the object in the main students. S1 is new students of 1 okay, right? This one. Now show info. S1 dot show info. Java is case sensitive, okay? You must write this as same case how you are using it is case sensitive. If I write here S uppercase, it will not work. Or I lowercase, that will not work. So test 80 is very simple, nothing is there in it. Compile and execute, you should get 1 and copy, right? Test 80. Test 80, this one, simple, nothing is there. Now assume why I am taking here I, because I am assigning to SID. It is a confusion. I will not write I. Say 100 variables are there, so every time order can be different. It can be in any order. So it is difficult to remember. So what I'll do, instead of I, I'll say SID. Then SID, I'll assign to SID. And instead of N, I'll take name. And this is right. Now compile and see the output. It should be same output, right? Test 80, compile and execute. It is not same. Now it is becoming 0 and null. How? The reason is see again execution flow. you have method area, method area, so this is method area, stack and heap. Okay. Right, so test is loaded first, test 80, and main method is started execution. Main, right? Inside the main, S1 is the local variable, so this is S1, 8 bytes of memory. And when you say new student class has to load, okay, not loaded, so it will load students. Okay, students are loaded, no static block, no static variable, so just loaded. Okay, done. Now when you are saying new student, this S1 equal to new student with 2 argument, right? 1 and cofil. This is called. Now from here the constructor has to call for this statement. On top of these, constructor will be loaded. This is constructor loaded. Say this is student constructor, and in the student constructor, this is stack. Okay, on top of this it will load. So this is constructor loaded from here till this, and inside the constructor 2 argument, local variable SID and name. This will be local variable. So SID, memory allocated, and name, memory allocated. SID value you are passing from here 1 Okay, so this is 1 and this is open, like this. Means this SID coming into this SID, this is coming in this, and this is the constructor called. Constructor is loaded. These are the statements. Okay, currently. So after that, it has to create the object and initialize the memory for these two, SID and name, right? So object is created. This object created. In that SID memory allocated, default value 0, name memory allocated, default value null, right? Done. Then in the constructor, first statement, SID has to initialize to SID. What it will do? Previously it was I was assigning to SID. So this was I not previously, I was assigning to this SID. This was just N was assigning to name. But now it is SID assigned to SID, means what it will do is it will assign this SID to here itself. Okay, this SID will be assigned here itself. This will assign here itself. It will not go to this. Same way, name should assign to this. Name should assign here. Name will assign to here itself. So this is assigning here itself, and so these remains default value. Okay, this value remains default 0, this value remains default null. It is not going to assign here, and this execution is over. So control, this will be terminated, this will be deleted, and control from here, control comes back to this part, constructor called from here. This part means from here control goes back to the constructor, and then control is to S1. Means this has to assign to S1. Now what is the value here? 1040. Assume this will come into 1040. And now this starts pointing into this. Now when you say now control is S1 dot show info, what is the show info value? SID and name, default value 0 and null. So you are getting this value. Okay, because of this reason in the output you are getting these zeros and nulls. Zeros and null you are getting because of this reason, because that is not initialized at all. Now what you have to do, what you are saying here is you are telling, now your intention is you are telling that the SID in the constructor, what is your intention? The SID, this one, this SID should be, this is the local SID, this one, okay, should be assigned to this one, means it should go actually to this. This name is this one. And your intention is this name has to assign here, means it should be this name, right? It should not reassign to the local. It should come at this place. It should come at this place. So this problem is coming when you are when the local variable name, this SID and name, this local variable name and these instance variable name same, both the name is same, at that time these values, these issues come. So local variable, when you mention directly, now from here we are seeing, if we just say SID, it is understanding that you are talking about the local variable. You are not talking about the instance variable. You are not talking about the instance. So it is not assigning. It is assigning to local itself. It is assigning to local itself. So now you have to tell explicitly that this is the local SID find. This is the local SID find, but this is not the local. This should go to the object SID, instance variable. Okay, instance variable. So that how you can say, and it is a confusion, right? Because at that time S1 is also not there. S1 is not ready at that time. You cannot say S1.SID because S1 control is not here at this point. So you cannot say SID also. So what you can do is, you can say at the time of creating the object, which object you are creating? This object. On this object, if you need to refer, how you will refer? With S1. But at that time your S1 is also not ready. S1 is also not ready. So what you have to do? You have to mention here this. This refers to the current object. This refers to the current object. So how you can solve this issue? You can say explicitly that this is not just SID, it is this dot SID, and this is also this dot name. Okay, this dot SID and this dot name. Compile this again, test 80, and now it works fine. Okay, now so this meaning is the current object, which object is creating that object. If I create another student 2, then in that case this means the second student 2 with a value 12 2 and this is say so S2. Now when we will call the constructor, this means the second object which you are creating. Okay, so finally we are actually running out of time. So when we will create another object, there also another this means this object, and here this means this object. Okay, so when you are using the constructor to create the object, that particular one is referring by this keyword. This keyword is referring the current object, which object is creating. This means current object which is creating. Okay, so this is very, very important. This is not done yet. We'll see more details on this in the next class. Any questions so far? Go through this video repeatedly, okay, multiple times, so understand clearly. Okay, if no question, we'll stop here today. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you so much.